Chapter 29. The Twits Get the Shrinks. And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room. "It's all your fault," yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air. "You're the one, you ugly old cow, who went hopping around shouting, 'We're upside down, we're upside down.' And you're the one who said to stand up on our heads so we'd be the right way up, you whiskery old warthog," screamed Mrs. Twit. "Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever." "You may be stuck here forever," said Mr. Twit, "but not me. I'm going to get away." Mr. Twit wriggled and squirmed, and he squiggled and wormed, and he twisted and turned, and he choggled and churned, but the sticky glue held him to the floor, just as tightly as it had once held the poor birds in the big dead tree. He was still as upside down as ever, standing on his head. But heads are not made to be stood upon. If you stand on your head for a very long time, a horrid thing happens. And this was where Mr. Twit got his biggest shock of all. With so much weight on it from up above, his head began to get squashed into his body. Quite soon it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight in the fatty folds of his flabby neck. "I'm shrinking," burbled Mr. Twit. "So am I," cried Mrs. Twit. "Help me, save me, call a doctor," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'm getting the dreaded shrinks." And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too, and this time it wasn't a fake. It was the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks, then their necks began shrinking into their bodies, and their bodies began shrinking into their legs, and then their legs began shrinking into their feet. And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came around to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw, on the floor of the living room, 2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in this world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. And everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!" The end.